Marcus Whitfield had everything money could buy. He lived in a house so big that it had 20 rooms. His car was shiny and black, the kind that made people stop and stare when he drove by. He wore expensive suits and watches that cost more than most people earned in a year. But on this cold, rainy night, none of that mattered. The rain fell hard on the city streets. Water rushed down the gutters like tiny rivers. Marcus sat in the back of his car, staring at his phone. His driver, an old man named Henry, drove carefully through the wet streets. The windshield wipers moved back and forth, squeaking with each swipe. Marcus was angry. Very angry. His business partner had just stolen money from him. Millions of dollars.
Gone. Just like that.
Marcus had trusted him. They had been friends for 10 years. But now, that friend had run away with everything. Marcus made a fist with his hand. His jaw was tight. He wanted revenge. He had already called his lawyers. He had already made plans to destroy the man who betrayed him. Nothing else mattered. Not his wife at home. Not his 2 children sleeping in their beds. Only revenge. The car stopped at a red light. Marcus looked out the window. The streets were almost empty. Only a few people walked by, holding umbrellas and newspapers over their heads to stay dry. The rain made everything look gray and sad. Then he saw her. A little girl stood on the corner. She was small, maybe 8 or 9 years old. Her skin was dark brown, and her hair was wet and stuck to her face. She wore a dirty white shirt and pants that were too big for her. No jacket. No shoes. Just standing there in the rain, shivering. Marcus looked away. He had seen homeless people before. The city was full of them. He usually didn't pay attention. They were not his problem. He had his own problems to worry about. The light turned green. Henry started to drive forward. Suddenly, the little girl ran into the street, right in front of the car. Henry slammed on the brakes. The car stopped so fast that Marcus almost fell forward. "What in the world?" Marcus shouted. His heart pounded in his chest. The little girl stood in front of the car, holding up her small hands. Her eyes were wide and scared, but she didn't move. She just stood there, blocking their way. Henry rolled down his window. "Child, get out of the road. You'll get hurt." But the girl didn't move. Instead, she ran to Marcus's window and started banging on it with her little fists. "Sir, sir, please," she screamed. Her voice was high and desperate. "Look under your car. Please. Look under the car." Marcus stared at her through the window. What was this crazy girl talking about? Look under the car?
Why?
"Drive around her, Henry," Marcus said coldly. "She's probably trying to trick us so someone can rob us."
Henry hesitated.
"Sir, maybe we should. I said drive around her," Marcus snapped. But the girl wouldn't move. She kept banging on the window, her small hands making wet slapping sounds against the glass. Tears mixed with rain on her face. "Please," she cried. "There's a baby. Under your car." "A baby?" Marcus's heart stopped. "A baby? Under the car?" He looked at Henry. Henry looked back at him, his old face full of shock. "That's impossible," Marcus said. But his voice shook a little. The girl was sobbing now. "I saw her. When you stopped at the light. A lady put her baby under your car and ran away. The baby is tied there. If you drive, you'll hurt her. Please. You have to look." Marcus felt something strange in his chest. Fear? Worry? He didn't know. He had been so focused on his anger, on his revenge, that he had forgotten how to feel anything else. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. But he opened the car door anyway. The rain hit him immediately, soaking his expensive suit. The cold water ran down his face and neck. He walked to the front of the car, his fancy leather shoes splashing in puddles. The little girl followed him, pointing under the car. "There. Under the front. Please look." Marcus got down on his knees. The street was wet and dirty. His suit was ruined. But he bent down and looked under the car. At first he saw nothing. Just the dark underside of the car and the wet street. But then he saw movement. Something small. Something wrapped in a dirty blanket. His blood turned to ice. There, tied to the bottom of his car with rope, was a baby. A tiny baby, maybe only a few months old. The baby's mouth was open, crying, but Marcus couldn't hear it over the sound of the rain. The baby's little arms moved, trying to break free from the blanket that was wrapped too tight around her body. Marcus couldn't breathe.
He couldn't think.
He just stared at the baby under his car. If Henry had driven forward, if he had told Henry to go around the little girl, if they had just kept driving, he didn't want to think about what would have happened. His hands shook as he reached under the car. The rope was tied tight, knotted around part of the car's frame. His fingers fumbled with the wet rope, trying to untie it. It wouldn't come loose. "Henry," he shouted, "call the police.
Now.
And bring me something to cut this rope." Henry jumped out of the car with his phone already in his hand. He opened the trunk and came back with a small knife. Together, they cut the rope and carefully pulled the baby out from under the car. Marcus held the baby in his arms. The baby was so cold, so small. She had stopped crying and just looked up at him with big brown eyes. Eyes that trusted him. Eyes that didn't know how close she had come to death. Marcus looked around for the little girl who had saved this baby's life. The girl who had risked everything to stop his car. But she was gone. Disappeared into the rainy night like a ghost. All that remained was the baby in his arms and the terrible knowledge of what almost happened. Marcus Whitfield, the millionaire who thought he had seen everything, fell to his knees in the rain and wept. The police came quickly, their blue and red lights flashing through the rain. An ambulance arrived right behind them. Paramedics rushed to take the baby from Marcus's arms. They wrapped her in warm blankets and checked her body for injuries. Marcus stood there, soaking wet, watching them work. His expensive suit was covered in mud and oil from the street. His hands were shaking. He couldn't stop seeing that image in his mind. The baby under his car. The rope. How close he had come to driving away. "Sir, we need to ask you some questions," a police officer said. She was a tall woman with kind eyes. "Her name tag," said Officer Chen. Marcus told her everything. About the little girl who had stopped his car. About what she had said. About finding the baby tied underneath. He described the girl as best as he could. Small, thin, wearing a dirty white shirt and pants, no shoes, wet black hair. "Did you see which way she went?" Officer Chen asked, writing notes in a small notebook. Marcus shook his head. "She just vanished. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. I was so focused on the baby that I didn't see where she went." Officer Chen nodded. "We'll search the area. That little girl is a hero. She saved this baby's life. And maybe she needs help too." Something twisted in Marcus's chest. The girl was out there somewhere, alone in the rain with no shoes. While he had been sitting in his warm car, thinking only about his revenge, that little girl had been brave enough to risk everything to save a stranger. "I want to help find her." Whitfield had everything money could buy. He lived in a house so big that it had 20 rooms. A reward. His car was shiny and black, the kind that made people stop and stare when he drove by. That's very generous, Mr. Whitfield. And watches that cost more than most 3 hours driving through the rainy streets with Henry. But on this cold, rainy night, they searched every alley, every doorway, fell hard on the city every place where water rushed down the gutters might hide from the rain. Rivers. But the city was big, sat in the back of his car, was small, staring at his phone. She could be his driver, an old man named Henry. Later, drove carefully through the wet streets. He hadn't felt the windshield wipers moved back and forth, squeaking heavy with each swipe. He had almost driven away. Angry. He had wanted to drive around her. His business partner had just stolen money from him. That baby millions of dollars, and it was all because he had been too busy thinking about revenge. Marcus had trusted him. Too busy being friends for 10 years. Too busy focusing on money and getting even with the man who had stolen from him. Marcus had almost become a monster without his even knowing it. He wanted revenge. Marcus told Henry to drive home. His wife, already made plans to destroy the man who betrayed him and worried. Nothing else mattered. She had called him 15 times. Not his wife at home. The police had already contacted her about what happened. In their beds. Marcus walked through his big front door. The car stopped leaving muddy footprints on the expensive looked out the window. Elizabeth ran were almost empty. Her face only full a few people walked by and relief, holding umbrellas and newspapers over their heads to stay dry. "Are you okay?" The rain made everything look gray, Marcus
sad.
hugged her tight.
Then he saw her.
He hadn't hugged her
A little
like
girl
this in
stood on the
months.
corner.
Maybe years.
She was small.
He had been
maybe
too
8
busy
or 9 years old.
too focused on
her
work
skin was
and
dark
money
brown
and winning,
and her hair was
"I'm
wet
fine,"
and
he
stuck
whispered.
to her face.
But Liz,
She
I
wore a
almost did
dirty
something
white shirt
terrible
and
tonight.
pants that were too
I
big
almost
for
killed
her.
a baby.
No
because
jacket.
I wasn't paying
No
attention.
shoes.
Because
Just
I was
standing
too
there in the
angry to
rain,
care.
shivering.
He
Marcus
told her
looked away.
everything. He had
Elizabeth
seen homeless
listened
people
with
before.
tears in her eyes.
The city was full of
When
them.
he finished,
He usually
she
held
didn't pay
his face
attention.
in her hands.
They were not his problem.
But you didn't, she
He
said
had his own
softly.
problems to worry
That
about.
little girl stopped
The
you.
light turned green.
And now you can make things
Henry
right.
started to drive forward.
Marcus couldn't sleep
Suddenly,
that night.
The little
He kept
girl
thinking
ran
about the
into
little
the
girl.
street. Who was
right
she?
in front of the car.
Where did she sleep?
Henry slammed
Did
on
she
the
have
brakes.
parents?
The car
Was she
stopped
hungry?
so fast that
Cold?
Marcus almost
Scared?
fell forward. The next
What in
morning,
the world?
Marcus did
Marcus
something
shouted.
he had never done
His heart
before.
pounded in
Instead
his
of going
chest.
to his office,
The little girl
instead
stood
of calling
in front
his
of the
lawyers
car,
about revenge,
holding up her
he went
small
back to that
hands.
street corner.
Her
where he
eyes
had
were
seen the
wide
girl.
and scared.
It was a bright,
but
sunny
she didn't
morning
move.
now.
She
The
just
rain was
stood
gone.
there, blocking their
The
way.
street looked different
Henry
in
rolled
daylight.
down his window.
Marcus saw a
Child,
small
get out of the
grocery
road,
store,
a
you'll get
closed
hurt,
restaurant,
but
and
the girl
a few
didn't
apartments
move.
above some shops.
Instead,
He
she
started
ran to
asking
Marcus's
questions.
window and
The
started
grocery
banging
store
on it with
owner
her
shook
little
his
fist.
head.
I see
Sir,
lots of homeless kids
sir,
around here.
Please,
She
can't tell them
screamed.
apart.
Her voice was
The restaurant
high
owner
and
said the same
desperate.
thing.
Look under
They
your
come
car.
and go.
Please.
I chased them away.
Look under the
when
car.
they beg for food.
Marcus stared at her
Marcus
through the
felt
window.
sick.
What was
People
this
just
crazy
chased them
girl
away?
talking about?
These were children.
Look under the car.
Then he met
Why?
an old lady
Drive around
sweeping
her,
the
Henry.
sidewalk in front of an
Marcus
apartment
said
building.
coldly.
Her name
She's
was
probably
Mrs.
trying to
Patterson,
trick us, so
and she
someone
had
can rob
kind,
us.
wrinkled eyes
Henry
that
hesitated.
reminded Marcus of
Sir,
his grandmother.
maybe we should.
You're looking for a little girl?
I said drive
She
around
asked.
her.
Then
Marcus
thing
snapped.
wears a white
But
shirt.
the girl wouldn't move.
Marcus's heart
She
jumped.
kept banging on the
Yes.
window. Her
Do you
small
know her?
hands making
Mrs.
wet
Patterson
slapping
nodded
sounds
slowly.
against the glass.
That's Grace.
Tears mixed with
Sweet
rain
child.
on her face.
She sleeps in the alley
Please,
behind
she
my
cried.
building sometimes.
There's a baby.
I give her
Under
food
your
when
car.
I can, but
She
baby.
never stays long.
Marcus's heart
Doesn't
stopped.
trust adults
A baby?
much.
Under the car?
Grace.
He looked
Marcus
at Henry.
repeated.
Henry
The
looked
girl
back
had
at
a
him.
name.
His old
She wasn't
face
just
full of
some
shock.
homeless child.
That's impossible.
She was Grace.
Marcus said.
Why doesn't she
But his
trust
voice
adults?
shook a little.
Marcus
The girl
asked.
was sobbing now.
Mrs. Patterson's
I saw
face
her.
grew sad.
When you stopped
Her
at the
mother
light,
was a drug addict.
a lady put her
Left
baby
Grace
under your
alone
car
for days at a
and
time.
ran away.
Then one day,
the baby
child
is tied
services
there.
came
If
and
you
took Grace
drive
away.
you'll hurt
Put
her.
her in foster
Please.
care. But
You have
Grace
to look.
ran away.
Marcus
said
felt
the
something
foster home was
strange in
bad.
his chest.
Said a man
Fear?
there hurt her.
Worry?
She's
He
been on
didn't
the
know.
streets for almost
He had
2
been
years
so
now.
focused on
Only
his anger,
10 years old.
on his revenge.
Marcus
that
felt
he had
like
forgotten
someone
how
had
to
punched him
feel
in the stomach.
anything else.
10 years
This
old.
is ridiculous.
Living on the
he
streets
muttered.
for 2
But
years.
he opened the car
Running
door
away
anyway
because someone
the
hurt
rain
her.
hit him immediately.
And still,
soaking
she
his
had stopped to
expensive
save
suit.
a baby's life.
The cold water
I need to
ran
find
down
her,
his face
Marcus
and neck.
said.
He
His
walked
voice
to the front
was
of the
urgent.
car.
She
fancy
saved a
leather
baby
shoes
last night.
splashing in puddles.
She's a hero.
The little girl
And she
followed
needs
him,
help.
pointing
Mrs.
under the car.
Patterson smiled.
There.
She
Under
usually
the front.
comes around at
Please
dinner
look.
time.
Marcus
leave
got
food
down
by
on
the
his
back
knees.
door.
The
If you
street
wait there
was
tonight,
wet and
you
dirty.
might see her.
His suit was ruined.
Marcus waited all
But
day.
he bent down and
He
looked
called
under
his
the
office
car.
and told
At
them
first, he
wouldn't
saw
be coming
nothing.
in.
Just
His
the
assistant
dark
was
underside
shocked.
of the car
Marcus
and the wet
Whitfield
street.
never
But
missed
then he
work.
saw movement.
Never.
Something
But
small.
nothing felt important
Something
anymore.
wrapped in a dirty
Not
blanket.
his business.
His blood
Not
turned
his
to
revenge.
ice.
There,
Not his money.
tied to the bottom
All
of his
that
car with
mattered
rope
was
a
finding
baby.
Grace.
A tiny
As
baby,
the sun
maybe
began
only
to
a
set,
few months old.
Marcus stood in the
baby's
alley
mouth was
behind
open,
Mrs. Patterson's
crying.
building.
But Marcus
He held a
couldn't
bag
hear
with
it
warm
over the
food,
sound of the rain.
a new jacket,
the
and
baby's
new
little
shoes.
arms moved.
Mrs.
trying to
Patterson
break
had told
free
him
from
the
Grace's
blanket
eyes.
that was wrapped
The alley
too
was
tight around
dirty
her
and
body.
smelled bad.
Marcus couldn't
There were
breathe.
dumpsters and
He
trash
couldn't think.
bags piled up.
He just stared at
Marcus
the baby under
couldn't
his
believe
car.
a child
If
lived
Henry
here.
had driven forward,
Then he saw her.
if he had told Henry
Grace
to go around
appeared
the
at the
little
end of the
girl,
alley,
if they had
walking
just kept
slowly,
driving,
looking around
he didn't want to think
carefully,
about what
like
would
a
have happened.
scared animal.
His hands
When
shook
she
as
saw
he
Marcus,
reached under
she
the
froze.
cars.
The
Their
rope was
eyes
tied
met,
tight,
and Marcus
knotted
saw
around
something
part
that
of the
made
car's
his whole
frame.
world stop
His
spinning.
fingers fumbled
Grace
with the
had
wet
his mother's
rope,
eyes,
trying to untie
the
it.
exact
The same
unusual
unloose,
gray-green color
Henry,
that
he
his mother
shouted.
had.
Call the
The
police.
same eyes he saw
Now.
in old family
And bring me
photos.
something to cut this
Eyes
rope.
that were so
Henry
rare,
jumped out of the
so
car with his
distinctive
phone already
that
in his
Marcus
hand.
had only
He
seen
opened the
them
trunk
in one other
and
person.
came back with a
His
small
sister.
knife. Together,
His baby sister,
they cut the
who had
rope
been
and
taken
carefully
away by
pulled the
child
baby out from
services
under the
25
car.
years ago
Marcus
when their
held the
mother
baby
died.
in his arms.
His sister,
The baby
who had
was
been
so
adopted
cold,
by another family,
so small.
his sister,
She had stopped
who he had
crying
never been able
and
to
just
find.
looked up at him with big
Marcus
brown
looked
eyes.
at Grace's face,
Eyes that trusted
really
him.
looked at it,
Eyes
and
that
saw
didn't
the
know
shape
how
of his
close
own
she had
nose.
come to death.
His own
Marcus
chin.
looked around
The
for the
same
little girl
small ears
who
his
had
mother
saved
had.
this baby's
His
life.
hands started
The
shaking.
girl who had risked
His
everything
throat
to
went
stop
tight.
his car.
It
But
couldn't
she
be.
was gone.
It was impossible.
Disappeared into the
But as
rainy
Grace
night
stood
like
there
a
in the
ghost.
fading light,
All that remained was
scared
the baby
and
in his
alone.
arms and
Marcus
the terrible
knew the
knowledge
truth.
of what almost
This
happened.
wasn't just a homeless
Marcus
girl
Whitfield,
who had saved a
the
baby's
millionaire
life.
who thought he had
This
seen
was his
everything.
family. Marcus
fell to his
couldn't
knees
move.
in the rain
He couldn't breathe.
and wept. He just
The police
stared at
came
Grace,
quickly,
his
their
mind
blue
racing
and
with
red lights
impossible
flashing
thoughts.
through the rain.
Grace took
An
a step
ambulance
backward,
arrived right
ready to
behind
run.
them.
Paramedics
Paramedics rushed
rushed
to
to take the
adults.
baby from Marcus's
They always
arms.
wanted something.
They wrapped her
They
in
always
warm
hurt her
blankets
or sent
and
her
checked
away.
her body for injuries. Marcus said,
stood there,
his voice
soaking
breaking,
wet.
Please
Watching
don't
them
go.
work.
I'm
His
not going to
expensive
hurt you.
suit was covered
I
in
just wanna
mud
talk.
and oil from the street.
Grace stopped,
His
but
hands
didn't
were
come
shaking.
closer.
Her
He
body
couldn't
was
stop
tense,
seeing that
like
image in
a
his
rabbit
mind.
ready to
The
jump
baby
at
under
any
his car.
sound.
The rope.
You saved that
How
baby
close
last
he had
night.
come to driving
Marcus
away.
said softly.
Sir,
You're a hero.
we need to ask you some
I wanted
questions.
to say thank you.
A police officer
and
said.
I brought you
She was
some
a tall
things.
woman with kind eyes.
Her name Tag,
Said Officer Chin.
Marcus told her everything. About the little girl who had stopped his car. About what she had said. About finding the baby tied underneath. He described the girl as best as he could. Small, thin, wearing a dirty white shirt and pants, no shoes, wet black hair. Did you see which way she went? Officer Chin asked, writing notes in a small notebook. Marcus shook his head. She just vanished. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. I was so focused on the baby that I didn't see where she went. Officer Chin nodded. We'll search the area. That little girl is a hero. She saved this baby's life. And maybe she needs help too. Something twisted in Marcus's chest. The girl was out there somewhere, alone in the rain with no shoes. While he had been sitting in his warm car, thinking only about his revenge, that little girl had been brave enough to risk everything to save a stranger.
I want
Marcus
help with the
Whitfield
bag
had
with the food,
everything
Marcus
money
said
could
suddenly.
buy.
Then
He
slowly
lived
paid
in a
for
house
search
so
teams.
big that it
He
had
didn't want to
20
scare her
reward.
by moving
His
whatever
car
it
was shiny
takes.
and black.
Grace's
The
eyes
kind that made
searched
people
and
stop and
surprised
stare
and
at
to
him.
Marcus.
That's
He
very
wore
generous
expensive
suits
suits
and
and
he could
watches
see it
that
in her
Marcus
face.
spent the
Next
next
3
3
hours
hours
driving through
afraid.
the
But
rainy
on this
streets.
what's her
Cold
full
and
name?
rainy night.
They searched
Marcus
none of
every
that
alley,
mattered.
trying to keep
Every
his
door
door
fell
hard on the
even
street.
though his
Place.
heart was
Where
beating
water
like a
rushed
drum.
down the gutters.
Grace
Grace
didn't
didn't
answer
answer
at
at
first.
first, but the city
Marcus
was
sat
big
in the back of
and
the
so
car,
was small,
staring at his
he
phone.
almost
He could
couldn't
be
hear
his
anywhere.
driver,
She
an
said.
old man named Henry
drove.
Marcus
Carefully
felt
Patterson
something
Street.
he
The
hadn't
same
felt
last
windshield
name as
wipers
his mother's
moving
back
name.
and forth.
Real.
The same
Heavy
name his
guilt
little
swipe.
sister would
He
have
had
had
Marcus
before
driven
she was
away.
adopted.
He had
Very
wanted to drive
felt
around
tears
her.
burn his
business
eyes. If he had
partner
listened
had
to his
just
first
stolen
how
money
old
from
are
him.
you? That baby
10,
millions
he
of
whispered.
dollars.
And
it was
your mother,
all because
just like
what
that.
was her name?
Too busy thinking
Marcus
about
had
revenge.
his face grew hard.
Too
They had
busy
been friends
being
for
angry.
10 years.
Why do
Too
you
busy
care?
focusing
But now,
on money.
everyone
and
else
even
had
was
run
run
away
away
with
with
everything.
stolen from him.
Please,
Marcus
he had
made
almost
almost
become a
his
monster.
It's important without
His
his
jaw
jaw. I
was
think I might
tight.
know who you
At
are.
3 in the
Wanted
morning,
revenge.
Grace
Marcus
laughed.
he had
told
already
Henry
called
to drive
his
home.
It wasn't a happy life.
He had already made
It was
plans
sad.
to destroy the man
Bitter
who
sound
waited
that
and
no
worried.
10-year-old
Nothing else
should
she had
ever
called
make.
him 15
Not his
times.
nobody
at
knows
home.
who I am.
The police
Not
had
nobody
already contacted
contacted
her about what
sleeping in
happened.
their
My mama
beds.
didn't want
Marcus
me.
walked
Only
through his
revenge.
big
Foster
front
people
door.
didn't
The car
want me.
stopped
Leaving
at
muddy
a red
footprints
light.
on the
Marcus
expensive
looked
white
out the
window.
window.
Elizabeth
His
ran
streets
to
were
him,
almost
and
empty.
now the
Her
tears
face
were
was
falling down his
fear
face.
and relief.
Holding
This
umbrellas
rich
and
man
newspapers
dirty.
over
Oh my
their
God,
heads to
expensive
stay
suit.
dry.
Are you okay?
The rain
The
made
police
everything
said,
look
Grace.
gray.
Marcus
I think you're
hugged
my
her
niece.
tight.
Then he saw her.
I think your mother
a
was
little
my
girl
baby
stood on the
sister.
corner. Maybe years.
She was
Grace
small,
stared at
he had
him
been too
like
busy.
he was
9
crazy.
years old.
Too focused on
Her
work.
skin
Sat
was
down
done
right
right
there
and
on
winning.
the dirty
And her hair
ground.
was
I'm
wet
fine.
and
He didn't
stuck to
care
her
about his
face.
clothes
But Liz,
anymore.
she wore a dirty
He
white
didn't care
shirt
about
and
anything
pants
except
that were
I
too
almost
big for
killed
her.
a baby.
No
25
Jack.
years
I
ago.
wasn't paying
No
attention.
shoes.
My mother
Because
died.
I was standing
too
there.
I was
angry
15 years
shivering.
old.
He
Marcus
told her
father
everything.
had left us
He had
long
seen
before
homeless
that.
people
When
with
my
tears
mother
in her
died,
eyes.
the city was
I
full
had
of
when he
baby
finished.
sister.
He usually
She
held
held
his
only
face in
2
her
months
hands.
old.
They were not his
Her
problem.
name was
Didn't.
Sarah.
She
He
said
had his own
Sarah
problems
Marie
to worry
Patterson.
about.
Little girl stopped.
The
light
lights
turned
and
green.
now you can
Why?
make things
Henry
right.
started
Her
to
hands
drive.
started
Marcus
shaking.
couldn't sleep
Suddenly,
that night.
child services
the little
kept
girl
thinking
ran
about
to
the little
street.
girl.
Marcus
Who
continued
was
right
she?
in front of the
They
car.
said
Where
I
did
was
she
too
young
young
to
to
take
take
care
care
of
of
the
Did she have
brakes.
parents?
They said she
The
would
car
be
stopped
adopted
so
by
fast.
a good
That
family.
Marcus almost
I
fell
tried to
forward.
find her
The
for
next
What in
morning,
the world?
Marcus did
Marcus
something
doubted
he had never done.
His heart
I never knew what
pounded
happened to my
instead of
baby
going to his
sister.
office.
The little girl
Marcus
stood and
called
pulled
out
out
his
his lawyers
car
about
and
revenge.
holding up
He
her
went
small
back
hand
to that
photo.
street corner.
Her eyes were
faded
wide
and
and
cracked.
scared.
It was a
but you
bright,
could still
sunny
see a
morning
young
now.
Marcus
The
holding
rain
a
was
small
there,
baby.
blocking their
The
way.
street looked different
Henry
than
rolled
daylight.
down his
An
window.
unusual
Marcus saw
gray
a
child
small
get out of the
grocery
road.
store.
Is this her
You'll
closed
get her. Grace
restaurant?
whispered,
But the girl
a few
didn't move.
staring at the
above some
photo.
shops.
Instead,
Is this
he
my
started
ran
to
to
Marcus's
I
window
think so.
and
The
started
grocery
banging
store
on it.
owner
Her
shook his head.
You have her
I
eyes.
see
Sir, lots of homeless
my
kids
mother's
around here.
eyes.
Please,
Can't
and
tell
your
them
middle name
apart.
is Marie.
Her voice was
the restaurant
high
owner
and
said the same
desperate.
thing.
Grace's
Look under your
face
come and
hardened.
go. Please.
She
I
started
chased them
crying.
away.
Look under the
when
car.
they
Big
begged
tears
for
that
food.
ran
Marcus
down
stared at her
Marcus
through the
felt
window.
sick.
Mommy told me I had
girl
a
talking
somewhere.
about.
These were
Look
children.
under
She said
the
he
car.
was
Then
rich
he met
and
an
didn't
old
want to
lady
drive around
sweeping
her
the
sidewalk. She
sidewalk
said
in
nobody
front of
wanted
his
apartment
apartment
building.
coldly.
Her
Marcus
name
is
was
probably
heartbroken
trying
into
to trick
a
us,
million.
so
Someone
she
who love
kind.
us.
No.
Wrinkled eyes.
Henry
No.
hesitated.
Grace.
Marcus,
Sir, that's not true.
Maybe we should.
You're looking for a little girl.
I said drive
years.
around her.
I wanted
Then
to find
Marcus
her.
snapped. Where's a
I wanted to know
white
my
girl
sister.
wouldn't move,
Marcus's
but I
heart
couldn't
jumped.
jump.
She kept banging
And I
on the
never
window.
knew about you.
Her
You
small
know her?
hands making
Mrs.
wet
stood up
slowly
sounds against
and
the
took a
glass.
careful
That's
step
tears
toward
mixed
Grace.
with
Sweet
rain
child.
on
She
her
didn't
face.
run.
She
sleeps in the
She
alley
just
behind
stood there,
my building
crying.
sometimes.
There's a baby.
Small
I
body
give her
food
food
when I
car.
can.
Grace,
She
baby
never saved a
Marcus's
baby's life
doesn't
last
trust
night.
adults.
A baby?
Marcus said.
Under the
You
car.
risked everything,
He looked
Marcus
at someone you
pleaded.
didn't even know.
Henry looked
Girl
back
had
at
a
him.
name. Brave,
His
and
old
she
face
wasn't just
full
an
of
amazing
shame.
child.
That's
And
impossible.
I want to
She
help
was
you
Grace.
now.
Marcus said.
Why
I
doesn't
wanna be
she
your
his
trustee.
voice shook a little.
If you'll let me.
Marcus
The girl
asked.
was sobbing now.
Grace looked at her.
I saw her.
Those
Those
gray green
you
eyes.
stopped
Her
to
mother
tears.
was a drug
A
addict.
lady
You
put her
really
baby
Grace
in your
alone for
car.
days.
I think
and
so.
Ran away.
Then
We can
one
do
day,
a test.
baby
Child
is
services
there.
came.
But yes,
if you
Grace.
drive away,
You'll
I
hurt
really
her
think
in
I'm your
foster
uncle.
care.
And
You have to
Grace
look.
ran
I really
away.
want you to come
Marcus
home
said
with
the
me.
something
Foster home
strange
was
for a
bad.
long moment.
Said a man
Fear,
there hurt
Grace
her.
didn't
Worry.
move.
She's
He
been on
didn't
the
know.
streets
for
for
almost
almost
2
2
years now.
So focused
It's
on
only
his
10
anger
years
so
old
many
on his revenge.
times.
Marcus
That
felt
he had
like she
forgotten
someone
how
had
to
a stranger
handle
and
anything
said
else.
he was
10
family.
years
This
old.
is
But then
ridiculous.
she
Living on the
remembered
streets
last
for
night.
2 years.
She remembered
how
how
he
he
had
had
gotten
gotten
down in the
because
rain.
someone
The rain
hurt
hit
that
him
baby.
immediately.
And still,
She remembered
soaking
how
his
he had
sobbed
cried
to
while
save a
holding
baby's
the
life.
baby. The cold water.
I need
She
to
remembered
remember
that he
his
had come
face.
back looking for her.
He
His
walked to
voice
the
was
front
just
car.
maybe.
His
He was
fancy
telling the
leather
baby
shoes
last night.
I'm scared.
She's a hero.
Grace
The little
whispered.
girl
And she
followed
needs
him.
help.
I know. Pointing
Mrs.
Mrs.
Carter.
Patterson smiled.
I'm
There.
scared too.
She
Under
usually
the
comes
front,
around
we can
and
be
scared
scared
together.
I
Marcus
leave
got
food
down
by
by
the
held
back
out his
door.
hand.
The
If you
street
wait
was
looked at
wet
his hand
and
for a
dirty.
long
See her.
time.
His suit was
Then,
red. Marcus waited
slowly,
all
but he
day.
bent
She
down
reached
and
out
called
under
his
the
office
car.
and told
At
them
first,
he
he
wouldn't
saw
be
me
coming
so
in.
small and
Just the
assistant
dark
was
underside
so
of the car
cold.
and the
Marcus
wet
was so
field
fragile,
never
but
missed
then
work.
he saw
Also
movement.
so
Never.
strong.
Something
But
small.
nothing
This
felt
little girl
something
had
had
survived
wrapped
on
in
a
a
dirty
dirty
blanket
blanket
for
for
2
2
years.
years. Blood
Not
turned
his
she had
revenge.
saved a
Not
baby's
his
life.
money.
Tied to the bottom
All
of the
that
fire
mattered
rope
was
was a
finding
Marcus
Grace.
gently
A
told
tiny
Grace
baby
the
into
sun
a
began
home
only
to
a
set.
few months
She was
old.
stiff at
Marcus
first.
stood in
The
the alley,
baby's
but then
mouth
she
opened.
wrapped her arms
Patterson
around
held him.
him. But
And
Marcus
held him
couldn't
back
hear
with
it
warm
over the
got
sound
you.
of the rain.
A new
Marcus
jacket
whispered.
and new little
I
arms
got you
moved.
now.
Mrs. Patterson
You're not
break
alone
clothing
anymore.
anymore.
That was
That
wrapped
night
alley
too
was
tight
dirty.
around her
Marcus
body.
took Grace back. Marcus couldn't
Elizabeth
breathe.
had prepared the
guest
guest
room
room
with
with
clean
clean
She just
sheets
stared
and
at the
Marcus
baby
couldn't
under
believe
his
it.
car.
Their child
If
lived
Henry
here.
had never met Grace
Then he saw
before,
her.
if he had told
Welcomed
her
her
to
with
go
cheered
around
at
the
the end of
smiles
the alley.
and shared
If they had
water.
just kept
Slowly.
driving,
Grace
looking
took her
around,
first
he didn't want to
bite
think about
into
what
what
would
had
have
happened.
scared animal.
His hands were
when she
shook
saw
as he
Marcus
kneeled
under
at
the
the
table.
table.
The
They
rope
slept
was
in a
tied
real
tight,
bed
and
with a
Marcus
real
saw
dog
something
part
that
of the
made
car's
his woke
whole
up
world
knowing
stop
that
spinning.
someone
His fingers
cared
fumbled
over
through the
the
wet
wet
rope.
mother's eyes.
The
Trying to
DNA
untie
test came
exact
back.
same
It wouldn't
colors.
unusual gray-green
It
color.
confirmed
The
what
shower
Marcus
hat.
already
Call
knew
the
in his
same
heart.
eyes he saw
Grace
in
was
old
his
family
and bring me
photos.
something to
His
cut this
eyes
rope.
that were
His
so
Henry
rare.
jumped out of the
Marcus
car with
never
his
did
phone
get his
already
revenge
unstrapped.
on the
Had
business
only
partner
seen the
them
trunk
stole
one
from
other
came
person.
back with his
He
small
realized
sister.
that the money
Together,
babysitter
they cut the
who
rope
had been
and
taken
none of
away
it
by
mattered
child
to pay
services
services
25
years ago.
Marcus
When
when
their
he
mother
had
died
driven
in
away
his
that
arms.
night.
His sister,
The baby
who had
had
been
been
adopted
adopted
by
by
another
another
family,
so small.
a baby
His
would
sister,
be
she had
dead,
stopped
who he had
crying,
never been
and
able
just
to
looked
never
up
have
at him
found the
with
Marcus
brown
looked at
eyes. He didn't
Grace's
know he
face.
was
Eyes
missing.
that trusted
Really
him.
looked at it.
Sometimes guys
And
that
then
didn't know
the
shape
shape
of his
of
own
his own
strange
come to
forms.
his own
Marcus
chin.
looked around to
the
the
same
dirty
small
and
ears
shoes
his mother
saved
had.
this baby
Standing
from
his
the rain.
hands started
The
shaking.
girl
Shouting
who
a
had
warning
risked
that
his
throat
throat
went
went
more
tight.
than just one
It
light.
couldn't
She
be.
was gone.
Sometimes
It was
they come to
disappeared
remind
into
us,
the
but as
rainy
Grace
night,
stood
like
there
a
in the
ghost.
fading
And
light,
all that
if we're
remained
scared,
was the
baby in
alone.
his arms,
Those
and
angels
Marcus
turned out
knew
to be the
truth
family
of what
we've
almost
been
this
searching
wasn't
for
just
all
a
along.
homeless
Marcus
girl
Whitfield,
who had saved a
the
baby's
millionaire
life.
who thought he had
This
seen
was his
everything.
family. Marcus
felt his
couldn't
knees
move.
in the rain
He couldn't breathe.
and wept.
He just
the
stared
police
at
came
Grace,
quickly,
his
their
mind
blue
racing
and
with
red
impossible
lights
flashing
flashing
through the rain.
Grace took
An
a step
ambulance
backward,
arrived right
ready to
behind
run.
them.
She
She had
had
learned
learned
to
to
rush to take the baby from Marcus's
They always
arms.
wanted something.
They wrapped
They
her in
always
warm
hurt her
blankets
or sent
and
her
checked her
away.
body for injuries.
Marcus
Marcus
said,
stood there,
his voice
soaking
breaking.
wet.
Please
Watching
don't
them
go.
work. I'm
His
not going to
expensive
hurt you.
suit was covered
I
in
just want
mud
to talk.
and oil from the street.
Grace stopped,
His
but
hands
didn't
were
come
shaking.
closer.
Her
He
body
couldn't
was
stop
tense,
seeing that image
like
in
a
his
rabbit
mind.
ready to
The
jump
baby
at
under his
any
car.
sound.
The rope.
You saved that
How
baby
close
last
he had
night,
come to driving
Marcus
away.
said softly.
Sir,
You're a hero.
we need to ask you some
I wanted
questions.
to say thank you,
A police officer
and
said.
I brought you
She was
some
a tall
things.
woman with kind eyes.
Her name tag, said Officer Chen.
Marcus told her everything. About the little girl who had stopped his car. About what she had said. About finding the baby tied underneath. He described the girl as best as he could. Small, thin, wearing a dirty white shirt and pants, no shoes, wet black hair. Did you see which way she went? Officer Chen asked, writing notes in a small notebook. Marcus shook his head. She just vanished. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. I was so focused on the baby that I didn't see where she went. Officer Chen nodded. We'll search the area. That little girl is a hero. She saved this baby's life. And maybe she needs help too. Something twisted in Marcus's chest. The girl was out there somewhere, alone in the rain with no shoes. While he had been sitting in his warm car, thinking only about his revenge, that little girl had been brave enough to risk everything to save a stranger.